The wave of high-profile defections from the Conservative Party to Nigel Farage's Reform UK signals a seismic shift in Britain's political landscape. Reform UK's success, particularly after its stunning performance in July's general election, where it polled this huge number of votes, even if it didn't get that corresponding number of seats, pointing again at the inadequacy of the first-past-the-post system, underscores a growing disillusion with the two major parties, Labour and Conservative, and with defectors such as the property magnate now Nick Candy, the former Conservative Home founder Tim Montgomery, the former Tory MP with the fingering MP, Andrea Jenkins. I'm sure there's somebody else. Oh, Rael Braverman, Suella Braverman's husband. Reform UK is increasingly positioned as a potent alternative to the current opposition. Nick Candy, this self-made billionaire, epitomises the dissatisfaction of Britain's wealth creators with the Conservatives. This is a man who has donated significant sums to the Conservative Party, and his decision to switch allegiance is rooted in a sense of betrayal over broken promises and punitive tax policies. And Candy's role now as Reform UK's treasurer, with a pledge to raise tens of millions for the party, exemplifies the financial muscle behind this insurgent movement. And as Maya Tusi points out rather brilliantly, Nick Candy, rather than being on the right of the Conservative Party, had been more to the centre-left. That is dangerous because up till now the impression has been that the Reform UK has taken people on the far right, but that's no longer the case. Andrea Jenkins, of course, she with the finger and the bright yellow dress, the person who was barely a cabinet minister for Boris Johnson, which is presumably why she got her finger out. She was very much on the right wing of the Conservative Party, a staunch Brexiteer and former education minister, failed in the last election and looks around for some sort of home. This highlights the ideological alignment between Reform UK and the disillusioned right of the Conservative Party. I was going to say Conservative members, but I think given her dactylic preference, one shouldn't be making too many references to members and vertical pronouns and so on. Her defection, alongside her candidacy for Lincolnshire's mayor, I'm sure she can put her finger on the button of that one, reflects the party's appeal to hardline. And in fact, she was wearing the right colour dress. Lincolnshire yellow bellies. I was brought up in Lincolnshire, by the way. So it reflects the party's appeal to hardline Conservatives frustrated with what they perceive as a diluted Conservative agenda under Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, who tries to look tough and can barely string a sentence together. And Reform UK's narrative resonates with voters across the spectrum. I mean, again, just to go back to Kemi Badenoch, contrast Kemi Badenoch's inadequate performance with the stunning rhetoric, albeit on a limited set of issues, of Nigel Farage. If Nigel Farage was better briefed, he would be a master at the dispatch box. Be in no doubt at all about Farage's ability. He outstrips Badenoch every time. And indeed, of course, Starmer. Farage can captivate an audience. Doesn't matter what he says. Doesn't matter what his political views may be. Look at the reality of his performance skills, because they matter. Performance skills matter. Kemi Badenoch has very few. Keir Starmer has none. Nigel Farage has it in buckets. And what is so extraordinary is that the one person who actually had this rhetorical capacity, Rishi Sunak, was cowed into parroting from somebody else's crib sheet every time he went out as Prime Minister for PMQs. There is a madness in British politics at the moment that doesn't allow those politicians who are capable of performing and holding a crowd to do so. Maybe it's a fear of having another Boris on our hands. But Reform UK's narrative, what it's actually selling, what it's actually doing, seems to be resonating with voters across the spectrum. It's criticism of immigration policies. It's the rush towards net zero, the housing crisis, coupled with the robust stance that it takes on freedom of speech. These have all tapped into widespread discontent. What does it offer in terms of positivity? I don't know. I imagine not very much. But in terms of tapping into the feeling of frustration in Britain, Farage's rhetoric emphasising this realignment beyond the traditional right-left spectrum has further broadened the party's appeal. And polling data reflects that momentum. Reform UK's 24% support in the polls rivals Labour and Conservative figures, demonstrating a rapid ascent since July's general election, where it garnered 4.1 million votes and secured 5 parliamentary seats. Now it's exceeded 100,000 people membership. Now, the membership of political parties in the UK at the moment is absurd. In the past, we were looking at millions. Now we're looking at 100,000, 200,000 maximum. And Reform UK is already there. It's already there with the big boys. And that's the alarming truth. It may not be very impressive, but it's still the alarming truth. 100,000 members puts Reform UK together with the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, because Lib Dems don't have anything like that. The Reform Party's strategy of building local momentum mirrors the Lib Dems' historic grassroots campaign under Paddy Ashdown, and with 400 branches nationwide and membership exceeding, I think now 105,000, Reform UK is rapidly consolidating its position. Candy's fundraising capabilities and the reports of potential backing from influential figures such as Elon Musk further bolster its credibility not only as a national party but as an international party. The defections are not limited to prominent figures. Conservative councillors like Robert Potts, former wayward pseudo-politicians like Andrea Jenkins. These reflect their grassroots shift. Farage's calls for Tory councillors to defect have yielded results, underscoring the depth of dissatisfaction within Conservative ranks. There are Conservative rankers all over the country who are thinking, like Andrea Jenkins, are they going to get their finger out? And despite its meteoric rise, Reform UK still faces hurdles. Allegations of racism among candidates, internal dissent, such as Ben Habib's resignation over concerns about how reform progresses. These highlight vulnerabilities. Additionally, the broader electorate remains wary of Reform UK's populist approach, with Labour still holding a significant lead in several polls. And of course, not in any doubt that it can hang on until 2028 because of the size of its majority in the House of Commons. The Conservative Party, traditionally a bastion of right-wing politics, now finds itself under siege from a party it once dismissed as a fringe movement. The challenge for Kemi Badenoch's leadership lies in reconciling the demands of traditionalists with the broader electorate's expectations. And while Badenoch still continues to pander to the right, she abandons that huge swathe of former Conservative Party members, what I occasionally call the Blue Rinse Brigade, who, like me, would never think of voting for her. Never think of it. We would rather stay at home, frankly. And if she tacked towards the centre, she would pick up the membership that she had lost. She would pick up some momentum. Tacking towards the right is not the way forward. Meanwhile, the Labour Party's inability to capitalise on government woes reflects the broader malaise in Britain's political establishment. Reform UK, the rise of Reform UK, is not just a story of defections, but a reflection of a deeper realignment in British politics. As Farage positions his party as a credible alternative, the question is not whether Reform UK will shape the future of British politics, but how profoundly it will redefine it. I think the likelihood is not that Reform UK will be the next opposition or indeed the next party of government. I think the likelihood is it will split the Conservative Party to such an extent that the Lib Dems come in as the party of opposition. I think that is my prediction. It was my prediction before the last election, and it remains my prediction. If somebody is itching to be successful in politics today, the party of choice to join is the Lib Dems. If somebody is trying to change politics and trying to effect major consternation and grab headlines, the party to join, of course, would be Reform UK. But I think it's a lot of noise. I think it will have a major effect. I think Reform UK will be instrumental in splitting and destroying the Conservative Party as a party of governance. But there is a party waiting, and that is the Lib Dems. And they need to be toughened, and they need to be prepared for a role as the opposition. Whether or not at some point they can turn that into government, I have no idea. I can't see that far into the future, but definitely Reform UK are going to fall at the next hurdle, but they will split the Conservative Party. There is no doubt at all that is not only likely, it is inevitable, it is a fact. The Conservative Party is doomed, and particularly under Kemi Badenoch, who, as I say, is moves in the wrong direction to ensure the survival of more than an unsightly rump of the Conservatives. And she is on the bit which is going to go, by the way. She is clinging to the cliff edge as the cliff splits away from the mainland.